everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Let's Talk Racism. We are your hosts, Rachel,
Sophia,
Jenny,
and Renee.
And we are so excited to be starting this project. We are the board team behind UNI, and today we'll be talking about our organization, why we decided to start it, and how we bring value to the community.
Let's Talk Racism is a podcast that sends a message to youth about racism and cultural diversity. As many of you know, racism has been a big issue all around the world. Furthermore, anxiety and fear about ongoing pandemic have been widespread. Asian-focused racist incidents and Black Lives Matter protests have constantly been happening throughout the year.
It has been a heavy year because of the murder of George Floyd. People have taken to the streets and to social media to express their anger. Maybe you have felt sad, angry, anxious, or confused, which is why we felt it was so important to continue our conversation about racism by starting a podcast.
So let's just get straight into it. For those who don't know, UNI is a registered, non-profit, student-led organization in British Columbia that seeks to raise awareness towards youth about cultural diversity and racial injustice. Our mission is to spread awareness regarding racial inequalities to youths and to inspire change around the world. Our purpose is to promote cultural diversity and overcome these racist perspectives while spreading this message. Our primary goals are to help promote and defend human rights so that we can make a difference in combating racism in our community.
Since one of the main goals of this organization is to promote anti-racism to youth, we decided to start this podcast project. Through our podcast, UNI is able to present different guest speakers' experiences, opinions, and viewpoints so that members of our community or anyone around the world can learn, connect, and reflect on their lives.
Especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, people become aware of current issues through social media platforms. That is why we are uploading the interviewed videos on our social media so that more people can hear of the significant ongoing events. Hopefully, this podcast can be an inspiring resource for all our listeners and viewers.
There are many guest speakers that will speak on their views and thoughts of racism and their own experiences, starting next week, so stay tuned for that. Sophia and Rachel, why don't you guys talk about the history behind their organization?
Right, so Rachel and I found this organization during the summer of 2020 following the various racial issues that had risen around the world due to lack of diversity and inclusion in our society's past. We wanted to raise our voices against systematic racism after the George Floyd incident, pushing to create a positive change in today's community.
Yes, and for me personally, seeing the people of my race getting discriminated against didn't sit right with me. Racial discrimination against Asians have increased dramatically with the rise of the pandemic. The pandemic has reinforced negative stereotypes on Asians, which are misguided and incorrect. Hate crimes against Asians have taken various forms, ranging from verbal threats and graffiti, all the way to physical assaults, with the majority of the acts of violence towards the Asian population have taken on the form of microaggressions with verbal abuse and harassments. Creating this organization with Sophia was so important to us because we wanted racism in the world to end. Also, the racism towards Black people inspired us to create this organization. The tragic death of George Floyd fueled the Black Lives Matter movement, but his death could have been avoided if people weren't racist. The racist perspectives and prejudice on Black people have caused a dangerous stereotype. We as a society must do better. Educate yourself on the importance of cultural diversity and use your privilege to honor and help the lives that have been lost. Small changes and actions lead to a big difference. Already, so many people have started to become part of this change, which is amazing to see.
So by further recognizing the importance, we decided to establish UNI to spread more awareness. And we believe that youth have the power to educate themselves and others on societal problems. We decided to be a part of the change and learn more about these prevalent issues. That's why we have so many informative posts about topics on racism that anyone can access to, so our social media platforms can help familiarize youth with racial prejudice. We also teach youth about what racism is, the history behind it, and current racial issues weekly. We're planning on expanding the types of posts we make so that they're not just limited to Black Lives Matter and Asian hate crimes. We'll also be covering all the diverse cultures in the world. And we have to recognize that schools have educated students to respect the Indigenous lands that we teach, learn, and live on. Canada has an unfortunate past with residential schools. We have all been taught about how Indigenous people have been forced to speak English or French instead of their native own languages and have to be forced to attend these residential schools, which disconnect them from their cultures and traditions. Now we wear orange shirts on September 30th to spread awareness and honor the Indigenous children who were sent away to residential schools in Canada. Unfortunately, they still face many challenges and their human rights are frequently violated. Indigenous peoples' rights to their own lands and territories have been arbitrarily ignored, resulting in devastating historic dispossession and ongoing failure to restore lands or protect Indigenous peoples' remaining territories. We need to use our social media platforms to continue to spread awareness and keep the conversation going.
In today's world of connected learning, the impact of social media in education is becoming a driving factor. The world is getting smaller, and through the use of technology such as social media, the way we deliver instruction is changing. Social media and education can complement one another if utilized effectively. There are numerous advantages, but I believe social media is considered as an effective tool for its participation and collaboration level among youth.
Yes, this is one of the reasons why Rachel and I started this organization. We decided that by using the social media platforms, more youth would become more aware of our organization, and we can continue to spread awareness about racism and educate more and more youth. Because of the ongoing pandemic, social media platform has become the main tool for youth to stay updated on news. And as a co-founder and president, I oversee all the events and actions that will engage and educate youth about racial injustice within the organization and carry out these multiple projects while keeping them organized. So as I came up with this podcast idea, I just wanted to make our voices louder so that even just one more person could hear about our stories to be more aware of these prevalent issues.
I completely agree. As the other co-founder, I try to find different ways to educate youth on racism, coming up with many ideas on what we can do to inspire them to take initiative in combating racism. Fighting racism has become a big part of my passion, and I'm so glad that I can use my voice to advocate against it. Not only am I a co-founder, but as treasurer, I've applied for the grants and use these funds for fundraisers so we can donate the money we make to charities that are fighting racial injustice so we can support one another on our journey to end racism. So Jenny and Renee, what made you two decide to join our organization? Renee, we can start with you. What is your position and what drove you to become part of the team?
So I'm the Chief of Staff, and as Chief of Staff, I meet with the fundraising team, club directors, and the design team. I joined this organization because I want to help the world become more equal and because I've been moved by the increased awareness for the BLM movement, as well as concerned about the increase in hate crimes against Asian people since the beginning of the pandemic. Personally, I think being anti-racist means not only being tolerant of all kinds of people, but actively embracing new cultures. Looking at the phrase anti-racist, it goes beyond just being not racist to being an active supporter for minorities facing discrimination. Becoming a part of the team is a chance for me to engage with others in the hopes of making a difference. I want to join the organization as it strives to end all discrimination in all levels of society, especially in the one most privileged, where sometimes people can continue to argue with their mouths open and their minds shut.
Amazing. The protests on Black Lives Matter and the sudden increase on discrimination towards Asians is also what drove Sophia and I to start this organization as well. And it is so important that we use our voices to advocate against it. Jenny, how about you?
As the secretary of UN organization, I assist the president and contact other organizations for partnership and collaboration to spread more awareness about racism. I decided to join this organization because I want to take part in making changes to the world. I want to see changes from those that were simply embedded in a society and those that have continuously passed down from a generation to another. I was always passionate about advocating racial issues, but didn't have the confidence to take my passion into an action all by myself. But UN organization gave me the opportunities to be in a position that I'm currently in right now, allowing me to use my voice and advocate for anti-racism. I'm working with groups of people that have similar pursuits and mindsets to me, and together we're bringing people together to fight racism. I'm so happy that I'm here working together with all the amazing people on our team so that we can raise awareness with youth about cultural diversity and racial injustice. We're genuinely hoping to capture the eyes of youth so that we can learn more about the issues that we as a world are facing right now.
Yes, I agree. It is so important to spread awareness to youth on this topic, and it's great that you guys decided to use your passion and turn it into something amazing. All right, so why don't we talk about the rest of the members of our organization?
In addition to our board and executive team, we also greatly appreciate the numerous volunteers that have participated in fundraisers to raise money for other charities fighting against racism. I think it is incredible how so many people are willing to help us on our journey to fight against racial discrimination. We also have amazing events coming up that have been organized by our fundraising team. There is an art contest going on for people to showcase their cultures through any form of art, which I think is fantastic. There is going to be a concert sometime in the near future for people to show our audience and anyone who comes across our social media pages their culture. I think the fundraiser team has done a great job at combining fundraisers and showcasing various cultures so we can raise money and spread awareness at the same time.
It is also amazing how we use our platform for people to share their culture with the world, further educating youth on cultural diversity. We are also proud of all the members of our organization. The design and media team have done incredible research and design for our organization to share the information with the world. The school branches have worked hard in spreading awareness about racism within their school. It's incredible that we are making such a big impact in such a small amount of time. And as we do that, we're also further educating ourselves. The effort they put in is amazing, and we're all working towards the same goal, raising awareness on racism and cultural diversity.
Yes, without the help of everyone a part of our organization and the amazing volunteers that help us, our organization wouldn't be where it is today. And it's truly amazing how so many youth are taking initiative to educate others on racism and use their privileges for something good. Now, earlier, Renee touched on the fact about what it means to be anti-racist. What do you all think?
Okay, so I personally think that being anti-racist and not racist are two completely different ideas, right? So not racist often refers to a passive response to the trauma and pain inflicted on Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the world. Being not racist does not require active response, active resistance to and dismantling the system of racism. Being anti-racist does. When people contribute to racism and racial inequalities, they are racist. But if they push to dismantle racism and promote racial equity, we are anti-racist. It is not enough to believe that being not racist will eliminate racism and racial inequalities. Instead, we must work as a society and within ourselves to challenge racism with each decision we make, and recognize that you need to educate yourself and be intentional in adopting anti-racist practices. Use your privilege to advance change and equity in our region, and also encourage others to do the same.
Yes, it is so important to know the difference between being not racist and being anti-racist. Being anti-racist really inspires the people around you to do the same.
So let's talk about our personal experiences with racism. Rachel, would you like to share your experience?
Yes. So I've actually experienced racism when I was younger, during my elementary school days. When I was younger, I was put into the ESL program, even though English was my first language. And because the school saw me as Chinese, they automatically assumed that I didn't speak English well. At the time, I was really confused as to why I was put into that program, and I didn't recognize that I was being discriminated against. I think it is unfortunate that even young children are being discriminated against based on their skin color. However, now I think it's great how schools are talking more about racism and cultural diversity, overall being inclusive of everyone, which is amazing. Luckily, my experience with racism wasn't very traumatic to me, but I know that some people are not as lucky as I am. Educating youth about this serious topic is very important to me because I don't want anyone to go through the same situation where they are discriminated against. Racism exists on an individual level, but more importantly, racism exists in the institutions and structures of our society. For that to change, we must address our foundation and the collective trauma and pain of racism while developing an anti-racist mindset.
Very sorry to hear that, Rachel, but it's amazing that instead of staying silent, you decide to use your voice for something good, and it is so inspiring. I know that kids these days face racism as well, and it is matter of fact true that they could be greatly harmed both mentally and physically. It is extremely upsetting that these events are continuously occurring throughout the world, but hopefully with our organization, the countless advocates of racism in the world, the schools that have fought against racism, that might change someday.
Thank you. I really appreciate those kind words. It is so important to me and Sophia and the rest of our organization that we use our voices to change how people view racism.
So to conclude the podcast, I would just like to say a few words. It is important for everyone to know that anyone can be a real advocate for anti-racism. We're all still learning as high school students, and we will continue to learn so that racism ends one day and the world will become a better place for everyone. Remember to be kind to everyone, and please treat each other with respect.
I agree. Everyone has a voice, and we all have responsibilities, and we also all have the right to be safe. Don't brush over racism and take strides to be anti-racist to all minority groups. We mustn't stop supporting the Black Lives Matter movement and other movements and organizations that are fighting against racism.
Yes, we must keep posting and keep it relevant to bring light to injustices and provide a stage for everyone to speak out.
We need to end the negativity surrounding racism and make sure everyone understands the importance of cultural diversity.
Yes, all right. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in to the end. Stay tuned for the next week's podcast episode. We have a very special guest joining us and sharing their experiences on racism.
So the guest will be revealed on March 24th, so be sure to look out for that. And as always, let's
keep the conversation going.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.